We see these verses in scripture all over the place where it says God creates all things. Here's Revelation 4:11, Colossians 1:16, for by him were all things created. Acts 17:24a, God that made the world and all things. Hebrews 3:4, for he that built all things is God, and so forth. Now this has a tremendous philosophical consequence, and that will lead to the conclusion. The only conclusion that can come out of this is that God creates everything at every instant from nothing. There has to be a creator of all things, all being, that is not the same as the being that's outside of it, is separate from it, and that creator is beyond being, is different than being. So if God creates all things and nothing else can, therefore there is only one cause of all things, and that is God. This is called occasionalism or divine omnicausation. It's a philosophical position. There's only one cause of all things, and that is God. Therefore, traditional causation does not exist. Prior moments don't cause the present. No moment is caused by a past moment. Instead, everything can only be created from nothing at every instant, which is a proof that God exists, because there has to be something that creates everything at every instant, because what we're about to show. So to sum up what I've said to this point, we're going to find that logic shows that every moment can only come into existence out of nothing by an external creator. In other words, there's a creator that's separate and distinct from the moment, that creates the moment, brings it into existence. And so therefore, each one has to be brought into existence by an external source, and they don't cause each other. So everything's created from nothing at every instant. Now this would be, the logic verifies that God exists. It's another proof for the existence of God. So this all has to do with a philosophy article that I published in a professional journal 20 years ago. The journal's called Disputatio. You can find the article. Here's my jailtheology.net website. Finally, a fully literalist systematic theology of the King James Bible. Yeah, that's what this website's about. Just trying to create a systematic theology where we don't add and subtract, since that's what literally everybody's doing. Nobody thinks there is what everybody's doing. Free will is a great example. Something that comes up a lot on this channel. The eternal hell is another. There's no verses that say that. The lake of fire is not eternal hell, Revelation 20:14. Anyways, how you get to this, the article is, go to CV right there, professional publications, and then here's all my professional publications. Here it is. The journal Disputatio. The impossibility of non-temporal relations between non-identical times and new arguments for presence. So back to this. I'll analyze this next and show you what that article says, what this means a little bit more here. And if these moments aren't caused by each other, past causing present, present causing future. And our specific reason for even saying that is because if God creates all things, then these moments aren't causing each other. God is creating each one individually, independently. They are created by something else, something outside of all being, which has the capacity to create all being. That is God. And every moment, time doesn't exist in the traditional sense. Reality is caused to exist at every instant by God, who creates everything out of nothing at every instant. The only possible exceptions to that are sin, God himself, which is definitely an exception, and human consciousness or similar consciousnesses. But I don't know if I'll discuss those points in this video. The point about sin, though, I have discussed in chapter 20 of my recent book, Hyper-Calvinist Universal Salvation, published by Whiffenstock last year. So let's go into the analysis of these here, of how this time stream doesn't make any sense, and there's no logic to it. It's complete contradiction, because God is creating every moment, every instant, not past creating present, for example. So the specific problem that we're going to find, and why we can't describe a time stream without contradiction, is right at this interface point between moments, like say a moment here, the present, moment here, the future. You got this interface. This is where the problem is. This is impossible. This is what I'm going to be talking about. And this is why a time stream like this cannot exist, and why God is to create everything at every instance. You can't say these interface here. And this interface point, the present is where the past is, and the past is where the present is. So this is what I published in an article in a journal called Disputatio. The specific problem is this interface point right there between times. Unless there's a gap between present and the future, for example, these two time moments, they have to touch. If they touch, there's an interface point where both exist. If they don't both exist there, then they don't touch and there's a gap. So if they do touch, then they both exist in the same place. But present and the future can't exist in the same place and time. That's a contradiction. Now, typically the way this is thought of among philosophers is a little bit different. It'd be something more like this. There's a present, and there's some kind of relation. Temporal relation is called. There's a future, past. So this is some kind of temporal relation. This does not change the situation where present and past touch, future and present touch, because present can't be past, and future can't be where present is, and present can't be where future is at this interface. So people have often said, oh, there's these temporal relations. Same thing, doesn't matter. Same thing happens. This is what I published in that paper. The point is the following. If it's the case that present and past and present and future, these can never contact, and you can't write philosophy of time in any way with relations or whatever tools, ontological tools, linguistic tools you want to create to try to describe time, it won't do you any good, because there's always a point, there's always interfacing of present with the past or present with the future, which is always a contradiction. It's like saying, here, let's blow up part of this right here. All right, let's take just right the interface point. And what you're going to have there is present and past are at the same place and time, that is. So that's at the interface of present and past right there, okay? This is why I always have held that time doesn't exist. Back when I wrote the paper, I held that just the present exists and it flashes in and out of existence. Now, I still hold, that's the position I still hold. That's what I think this leads to. There is no time stream of past, present, and future. We have memories in the present, we call that past, and think the past somehow still exists or something, which it doesn't. If to us in the present, it doesn't exist to us, because we can't contact, we can't touch it. It's just a concept that may or may not represent anything. The larger points here are the following. Present moment can't touch any other moment than present. If the present has a cause, it's not the past, or the future. It can't be. The common thinking, of course, that the past gets the present, causes the present. Not possible because of what we've written here, what we've shown. What that Disputatio paper I published says. The specific problem is this interface point right there between times, unless there's a gap between present and the future, for example, these two time moments, they have to touch. If they touch, there's an interface point where both exist. If they don't both exist there, then they don't touch and there's a gap. So if they do touch, then they both exist in the same place. But present and the future can't exist in the same place and time. That's a contradiction. So this is quite amazing what the pure logic shows here. Just to give a summary, pretty simple. Point one, God creates all things. We know that from scripture. We also know it from logic. That's going to be point three here in a minute. So time moments, if God creates all things, time moments can't cause each other. That's point two, since God causes them. Point three, in addition to scripture, pure logic also shows that time moments cannot interact, can't touch, as we've shown. So points 1 and 3 say the same thing. In other words, the Bible is about pure logic, of course. So the conclusion of this argument then is time moments can only be created by something outside of time, God. And all time moments can only come into existence out of nothing created by God. This is like saying the world, reality, is created not by the past, but by something outside of it. That's the definition of God. So God creates the present out of nothing at every instant. The only exception to him creating things out of nothing would be like minds, like spirits. I mean, our mind is a spirit. That I believe he creates out of himself. Ecclesiastes 12:7, John 1:13, lots of scriptural support for that. We are God's offspring, Acts 17:28. I mean, we come from inside of him. That's the reality that we live in. We live in a present moment being created by God at every instant. We've been told this false theology, this false philosophy, past creates present. That's a contradiction. I published that in that paper 20 years ago. I mean, it seems like a big breakthrough. And it just sits there in a philosophy journal, really kind of undiscovered. I find that interesting, but I mean, this shows a whole new picture of reality. This is the occasionalist picture. God creates everything. There's one cause of everything, that is God. Very different picture of reality than the godless one we've been taught. This is pure logic, which leads to this. Yeah, the past and the present, we don't have any evidence they even exist. Those are concepts. You exist in the present moment. You can feel that. That's what you know. That's your knowledge is of present. That's your epistemology. It contains a presentness, not a pastness, not a futurity. It's pure logic right here, which verifies Revelation 4:11. God creates all things. amazing, beautiful, logical discovery coming right out of the most basic theology, most basic concepts of the philosophy of time, pointing right to a scriptural understanding of the omnipotent creator God.